midnight screams.
Every full moon, my roommates eat me. It began around a month ago. I started losing time, long stretches of time, whether it was night or day. I'd go to class or to the library to study, and suddenly wake up at home. I didn't remember walking back or what I'd been doing in that missing stretch of time. I thought it was stress-related or maybe health-related, so I went to see the campus doctor. But he just prescribed me sleeping pills and asked me questions about my diet and lifestyle, as if that had anything to do with the fact that I was blacking out for hours at a time with no recollection of what I had been doing. It was the same every time. I woke up in bed with a gnawing hunger in my gut, like I hadn't eaten in weeks, and no memory of how I got there. It was definitely a weird situation, and paired with the fact that my roommates were acting increasingly weirder and less like themselves. The thing with them wasn't too crazy at first. I mean, it was just something I noticed. For reasons which baffled me, the three of them were suddenly sensitive to the moon, and I don't mean that it caused them headaches or nausea. I mean it affected them in ways which didn't make sense. Have you ever heard of the Transylvania effect? According to Discovery magazine, in the dark sky, the clouds shift, revealing the full moon's eerie silver gleam, and the people on Earth below go mad. I wouldn't have called it going mad, but something was wrong with them, different, and it's always the full moon that triggers it. Which made me wonder if it was, in fact, the Transylvania effect. I first noticed it at Abigail Matheson's house party. The party was nothing special, really. I didn't drink that much that night. The point is, I can't blame what I saw on being drunk. I know perception can be misinterpreted and messed up when you've had one too many canned strawberry daiquiris, but I was completely sober, and I was planning on staying that way until we left. I remember the night in clarity. I'm not a fan of crowds, so I lingered in Abigail's kitchen playing around on my phone. I only knew Abigail Matheson from Rowan and Emmy. They were in the same classes. I needed to find something to occupy my mind, or I was going to die of boredom. Most of the party was in the living room playing Mario Kart, and I was refilling my glass when I glimpsed Emmy's familiar blonde ponytail bouncing through straggling students grinding against each other. The party wasn't costume-themed, but Emmy insisted on wearing a baby blue ribbon in her hair, which reminded me of a grown Disney character. Imogen Prairie was the human embodiment of a golden retriever. She is as adorable as she is naive, and is always smiling no matter the situation. I lifted my drink in greeting, about to shout her name, but then I saw the expression on her face. She looked wary. No, that's not the word. I can't describe her expression because I couldn't understand it myself. For once, Imogen wasn't smiling. Her eyes were wide, lips twitching into a scowl. Her movements were erratic as she headed into the kitchen, grabbing a glass of punch and downing it before striding towards the back window and pulling the blinds shut. Rowan, roommate number 2, was right behind her. They were talking in hushed whispers, their heads pressed together before Rowan noticed me. Rowan was what you would call pretentious cute. Usually dressed in trench coats, his party outfit was oddly normal. Shirt and jeans, a loose pair of glasses sitting on top of unruly brown curls. Rowan Beck resembled what he called a normie. He fixed me with what I can only describe as a patient smile. "Nin, have you seen Kaz?" The copious amounts of lemonade I'd been drinking all night started to crawl back up my throat. His tone was different, darker, nothing like I knew. That was the first night I noticed something was wrong with him. "Huh?" I said stupidly. "Kaz?" Rowan raised a brow. "Yep, Kaz." He dragged out the Z. "The guy you live with. Have you seen him anywhere?" "I don't think so." I caught his sharp glance at the blinds. "Rowan, are you okay?" The man's gaze snapped to me. "I'm peachy." Rowan leaned against the table, his expression darkening. I sensed the desperation emitting from him, but it didn't make sense. Was Kaz in trouble? And why were they keeping it between them? What were we, little kids? His expression was sour, like he couldn't bear talking to me. "Did Kaz, by any chance?" "I don't know." He tapped out a tune on the countertop. Maybe go outside? Our third roomie had been MIA since the four of us walked in earlier. He made a comment about going to talk to a guy he was crushing on before disappearing into the crowd. I hadn't seen him since, which was very unlike Kaz. When it comes to games or anything playable, he's a competitive bastard. I expected him to be in the living room with the others, slamming buttons like his life depended on it. Instead, he was nowhere to be seen. I opened my mouth to speak when Immy stuck her head through the gap in the door. "He's fine," Immy said, a streak of panic in her tone. She shooed me back when I started forwards. "We've got this. Kaz is just, he's doing Kaz stuff." "Kaz stuff?" "Yeah." Imogen's smile was a little too big. "Like I said, we've got this." "Have we?" Rowan snapped. He raked his fingernails down his face. "How do you lose a 23-year-old guy?" "You forget to cherish him," Imogen teased, shooting him a grin. Rowan's eyes narrowed. "Take this seriously," Immy scowled, throwing a cup in his face. "He told me he was going to the bathroom," she said. "It's not like I could follow him." Rowan tossed a cup right back at her. "In these circumstances, yes, you should have followed him." Lowering his voice, Rowan pulled her closer. "But I still heard him. He could drown. What did I tell you about keeping the idiot away from the pool?" Imogen scoffed. "I'm sorry. How is that fair? Why don't you babysit?" "You offered." "Yeah, not for the whole night." Their argument was barely registering. "Drown? Nin, you stay here." Immy grabbed a reluctant Rowan's arm. "We'll go get him." I nodded with a smile, but that didn't stop me following them. I made it to the front door, almost tripping over myself. The party continued behind me, laughter and giddy screaming from the living room. In front of me, however, was something entirely different from the party. The front door was wide open, and the night sky bled inside the house. My three roommates stood on the threshold, their heads tipped back, eyes on the night sky, and the full moon bathing the dark in unearthly light. I've looked this phenomenon up, and it can be called moon drunk, but this had never happened before. I had lived with them for 2 years, and this was the first time they were entranced by the fucking moon of all things. Kaz was in front of the others, and I glimpsed a can of beer at his feet, spilling its contents onto rough concrete. At first, I thought they were marveling the sight. I mean, it was beautiful enough to stare at and smile, maybe comment on it, or take a photo. "Hey," I clapped my hands in Rowan's face. "What's going on?" He didn't even blink. Moving to Immy and Kaz, I shook them. Still nothing. They did move. Eventually. "See," Rowan's voice was almost a breath, his gaze still on the sky. "We've found him." When the music stopped, they came back to life, ignoring me, and bound back into the party with no explanation to what the hell had just happened. Moon drunk was starting to make the most sense. I got my answer when I went back inside, and Kaz was raiding the refrigerator. I didn't think much of it until I saw pieces of raw bacon squelching between his fingers and stringy white sticking from his mouth. Now, there's getting the munchies, and there's willingly stuffing yourself with raw bacon. Kaz? The boy twisted around so fast, almost inhuman. Kaz slowly inclined his head. Bacon fat caught between his teeth. There was a feral look in his eyes, which told me if I even attempted to stop him from feasting on raw pork, I'd lose a finger. His gaze tracked me like a predator before turning back to his meal. I left him to whatever that was. Immy, who hadn't paid attention to a guy since freshman year when she was assaulted at a party, was sitting in a random guy's lap, her lips latched to his ear. It was Immy who looked to be the one in control, but even being moon drunk, I didn't want her anywhere near a guy. Not when she was still in therapy. Before I could intervene, my housemate was yanking the guy to his feet in one pull and dragging him upstairs. To my shock, though, it was the guy who pulled away from her. "What the fuck?" he hissed. "Get off me!" Immy didn't seem fazed. She just offered him a smile and walked away, this time plonking herself in a girl's lap. It was strange behavior, considering. Kaz was a vegetarian, and Imogen was terrified of intimacy. Rowan was acting, objectively, the least weird. I found him in the kitchen staring into his drink. When I tried talking to him, he responded with one-word answers, his gaze glued to whatever was so fucking fascinating about his glass of Diet Coke. Was it a dead fly? Rowan. I followed him around, trying to snap him out of it. Hmm? His voice was almost sing-song. Rowan! He twisted around, doing a little dance, half-lidded eyes struggling to take me in. What? I tried to keep my patience. Did you know your best friend is currently gnawing on raw pig? I regretted my words 10 seconds after saying them. This guy was going to be zero help. So? Rowan settled me with a childish grin. You know what you are, Nin? I didn't answer, already expecting a stupid answer. Rowan threw a plastic cup at me. His grin was childish. Cuphead, comedic genius. What the fuck is going on? I hissed, only for him to lean forward and blow in my face. Do you like chicken tenders? He asked, before bursting into childlike giggles. Rowan spent the rest of the evening aimlessly walking around with a stupid smile on his face. He called me Cuphead for 3 hours straight. All three of them had that same mystified grin, and I couldn't snap them out of it. After the party, I noticed the following full moon they seemed to go 0 to 100 inches terms of personality changes. Kaz would spontaneously decide to go visit his parents in another state for no reason. Rowan was obsessed with blocking every window to avoid moonlight spilling in, and insisted the whole house had to be protected with duct tape covering every window and reflective surface. As for me, I was locked inside my room with the curtains drawn, forced to wear headphones with music playing. There was only one rule I had to follow, and when I questioned it, I just got the same answer from all three. Trust us. They wanted me to trust them when Kaz was gnawing on raw meat like an animal during a full moon. Immy was throwing herself at random guys and girls, and Rowan went into a trance-like state when he caught sight of anything reflective. I understood the moon was affecting them in ways I couldn't understand. But locking me in my room until the morning was over, kill. I was the only one who wasn't affected by the moon's light, and yet they treated me like I was in trouble too. Despite being overly reluctant, I agreed to their rules. I stayed in my room and listened to music as loud as it would go. According to them, I couldn't at any point remove my headphones. After playing half of my Spotify playlist, I drifted off, and before I knew what was happening, I was waking up with sunlight poking through the blinds, feeling like shit, a gnawing hunger in my gut, which splintered into nausea. There were differences that jumped out at me when I pried my eyes open, blinking through intense sunlight. I was wearing different clothes. I remembered I'd changed into a shirt and shorts for bed, but I was dressed for the day. I didn't remember drinking anything before falling asleep, but an empty glass was on my bedside. Except my mouth was parched, my lips dry. I didn't question it. I wanted to, but anything was possible. Maybe I was the delusional one. I was blacking out, so maybe I dressed myself without knowing, and then slipped downstairs and grabbed a drink of water in the early morning. After that night, things seemed to go back to normal. I decided that it really was a case of being moon drunk. The others didn't talk about it again, and life went on, I guess. I thought about talking about it with them, but when I tried, they would stiffen up or change the subject. Rowan would completely shut me down, and Kaz acted like I had a contagious disease. I asked Immy if anything happened, and she screwed up her face and jumped up with an excuse that she needed to go somewhere. Kaz dismissed everything I said and told me they were fine, and that the moon just gave them headache. I can be an idiot sometimes, but I was pretty sure eating raw bacon like an animal couldn't be justified with that excuse. When I tried to argue, he grabbed the controller from a sleeping Rowan and dared me to fuck up Immy's island. I did, swiftly ending up covered in Rowan's breakfast the next morning. So, basically, my roommates were hiding something big from me, and I wasn't planning on telling them about the blackouts, because part of me wondered if they were involved. I was convinced the two phenomenons were linked. So, yeah, a pretty toxic mindset to have on both sides. Anyway, this leads me to what happened last night. It was the usual I had gotten used to, anyway. After class, I hurried home to help with prepping the house for the full moon. Rowan was standing on a chair, taping up the windows, and Emmy was closing all the curtains and blinds. He was being an asshole as usual, so I busied myself with hiding everything reflective I could find before retiring to the living room and joining Kaz, who was working on his laptop. Emmy and Rowan were hard to talk to about what was going on, but with Kaz being the resident stoner, his walls came down a little. I slumped down on our Craigslist couch and grabbed a controller, resuming a game of COD from earlier. So, I focused on the game, navigating my first-person character through a pile of bodies. Kaz offered me a smile over his laptop. He reeked of weed. Sue? Are you ever planning on telling me what's going on? I don't know what you're talking about. The moon, I said. It's moon night, and as usual, everyone's freaking out. Freaking out? Kaz's gaze strayed on his laptop screen. I'm the epitome of calm right now. I threw a cushion at him. You're stoned, and I'm still waiting for you to explain your spontaneous Peppa Pig binge. He tossed me a sheepish smile. I was hungry. You're a vegetarian, I said, immediately remembering Rowan's moon-drunk state. Rowan was giggling, I whispered. It was, oh God, I'm still having nightmares. He laughed. Okay, he was definitely replaced. Or you both were, Kaz shrugged. We've already told you, it's just sensitivity. The moon can do shit like that. Look it up. Sensitivity, I repeated in a scoff, glaring at war-torn Europe on the TV screen. That's what you're calling it? Kaz lifted his head, his gaze snapping to me. What else do you want to call it? I took a deep breath. I had some guesses. Werewolf? He curled his lip, but I noticed his eyes darken significantly. Very original. 10 points for creativity. Werewolves freak out every full moon, I said. He nodded, humoring me as he typed. Kaz was like an older brother. Uh-huh. They're also not real. It's not that far-fetched. Kaz stopped typing, raising a brow. I'm pretty sure humans can't turn into dogs under the full moon. You've been watching too many movies. He shot me a look. Weren't you, really into Teen Wolf? I put the controller down. You lock me in my room until morning. I twisted to face him. How is that normal? It's just a precaution. You've told us how weird we act, so it's better to stay away from us. I'd feel better if I was with you. I swallowed. So, I know what's really going on. Kaz's expression seemed to change, relaxing slightly. He looked like he might reply before Rowan came crashing in. Quite literally. That guy can't walk 2 feet without falling or slamming into something. In this case, he tripped over the rug Emmy had been, vacuuming. I blamed the moon's influence on him being more hyperactive than normal. Rowan oozed ADHD. Stumbling into the back of the couch, he grasped onto the back to stable himself. What are you guys talking about? Kaz went back to typing with an exaggerated sigh. Nin thinks we're werewolves. Rowan straightened up with a very nervous laugh. What? Werewolves. Kaz shut his laptop. You know, people who can turn into dogs? Honestly, I'm offended. I thought Nin was more creative than that. There's a whole Wikipedia page on moon-afflicted creatures, and she goes with the obvious. Oh, wow, Rowan chuckled. Teen Wolf style? Kaz grinned. TV show or 1980s movie. Doesn't matter. Rowan started clearing up the TV table, flipping through comic books. They both suck. What sucks? Emmy yelled from the kitchen. Teen Wolf, Rowan yelled back. The girl made a sound of horror, and it was hard to hide my smile. Take that back. It's bad, Rowan said, loud enough for her to hear. You forced me to watch an episode, and I fell asleep. That was after season 3. Emmy appeared in the doorway, wielding a spoon like she was going to attack him. Gesturing wildly with the spoon, Emmy was desperate to defend her lockdown guilty pleasure. After season 3, it declined in quality, but it was still good. You liked the episode with the chess game. Rowan shrugged. That doesn't change my overall rating. Who are you, IGN? Emmy turned and marched back into the kitchen and slammed the door. It took maybe an hour for the two of them to get back on her good side. See, I think about these moments, and I wonder why I'm writing this post. I think I'm still in denial. I want to tell you thousands of reasons why they're not bad people. But then I remember what happened after that. I remember why I can't talk to anyone else, but an anonymous subreddit. At around 10 p.m., I found myself once again in my room going through the same routine. This time, though, they wanted to be extra careful, which meant a new addition to make sure I stayed there until dawn. Rowan knelt in front of me. I couldn't see the look in his eyes through his Ray-Bans, but I could tell he was wary. "You okay?" He fixed the headphones over my ears, jiggling them a little to make sure they were fitted properly. I tugged at the handcuffs, securing my left hand to the bed frame. "Kinky? It's just until morning, Nin." "Handcuffs, though?" I said. "Are they really necessary?" He didn't answer. "Remember what you have to do?" "Music on and blasting until I fall asleep. And I'm not coming out until morning," Rowan hummed. "Lastly, don't remove the headphones." He jumped up. "All right. Are you all set?" "Sure." I tried to smile. "I've got enough 80s pop and sad indie to last me a while." "Awesome." I tugged at the cuffs. "Rowan, if something is going on, you can tell me." He didn't turn around. "Really? Because, no offense, but I don't think a pep talk will help." "Well, I can try," I said. "I don't want to be locked up here every full moon because you're scared of moonlight." I was startled when he sputtered out a laugh before getting too close, his icy breath grazing my cheeks. "Well," Rowan murmured, "maybe if you weren't a coward that day, things might be different. But here we are, Nin." He flicked me on the nose. "Drunk on the fucking moon." He exhaled in my face, and something warm crept up my throat. Quite literally. "Are you a werewolf, Rowan?" I blurted. His entire demeanor changed suddenly. I felt him stiffen. I was used to his bad moods before the moon, but this was something different. This was hatred and resentment in its purest form, shown in the twitch of his lips. I didn't have to see his eyes. His smile through gritted teeth told me everything. Slowly, Rowan tipped his head to the side, like he was feigning innocence. "What gave you that idea?" Before I could reply, he climbed off the bed and offered me a two-fingered salute, his lips twisting into a grin I knew was fake. It made me wonder if I was wrong. If the moon didn't change them, instead bringing out their true feelings and selves. But that only brought more questions. He mentioned that day, which was part of the endless blur of darkness, memories torn from me in my blackouts. Did something happen during one of those instances which had triggered them to act like this? With that question in my mind, I attempted to lunge from the restraints, but he was already at the door. "Night." I didn't reply. I knew not to entertain him when he was starting to feel the moon's effects. When the door slammed shut and I heard the twist of the key in the lock, I lay back and closed my eyes. I considered tearing off the headphones and ignoring the rules, but that seemed petty. Plus, I was tired. I drifted off to music slamming in my ears. I still don't know how I slept through it. I don't know how long I was out for, but it couldn't have been long. A few hours. I woke up feeling ravenously hungry and yet hollow at the same time. When I sat up, I noticed something felt wrong. I frowned at my toes for way longer than necessary until I realized one was missing. I was supposed to have 5 toes on each foot, my foggy mind murmured. I counted them twice, but there were only 4. My pinky toe was gone. After staring at it for a while, I blinked, and I could have sworn it appeared in flashes, like the flesh was knitting itself back together. I was seeing things. That's what I told myself. Sleep paralysis was a thing, so I waited until I was fully with it, and when I was, my mind began to drink in my surroundings. The room was still dark, only lit up by my bedside lamp. I was in different clothes once more, and an empty glass of water stood on my bedstand. Something was different, though. It was still dark outside, and I could just about glimpse a sliver of moonlight poking through the blinds. Another thing which was different. My hand was no longer cuffed to my bed frame. Sitting up, I stretched and headed to the door. It wouldn't hurt to peek, I thought. I reached out and grabbed the handle and twisted it, only for the door to swing open. Weird. Wasn't it locked? They probably had some weird ritual to keep the moon out, which Kaz found on Yahoo Answers. Far too embarrassing for me to see. Slowly, I made my way across the hall and past the others' rooms, which were all silent, which meant they were downstairs. If I was honest with myself, I really didn't want to deal with them if they were under the moon's effects, but the rest of me was desperate to know what they had been hiding. Why was I sentenced to my room until dawn? The clock on rustic paintwork told me it was 1 a.m. as I slipped down the stairs, careful not to make noise. That meant I'd been asleep for around 4 hours. I heard voices when I reached the kitchen door. Emmy was laughing, and Rowan made a hissing noise. "That's not fair. You always get the blue ones first, and never give anyone a chance. I call bullshit." "Yeah, because you're losing," Emmy shot back. "Rowan's right, though." Kaz joined in. "You do act territorial over Park Place and Boardwalk." "I do not." "At least give someone else a chance to get the blue ones, Emmy." "Why? I got them fair and square. You're just calling me out because you've got—" "Hey!" Rowan yelled. "Hey, she can't just do that. $200 left," Emmy sang. "And you're stuck in jail." I rest my case. They were playing Monopoly without me. So, they locked me in my room and played games till dawn? That stung a little. I could have walked away. I mean, they were having fun. I should have left them to tear themselves apart over a board game. But I was grabbing the handle and twisting it, pulling open the door. When I stepped into our kitchen, the first thing I saw was the impressive amount of property cards Emmy had lain out in front of her, as well as the pile of cash sitting next to the board. I started to speak. I think I was going to congratulate Emmy on her clear win, but the words choked up when my gaze continued across the table, this time settling on a small plastic container filled with red mush, which Kaz was sticking his fingers in and scooping into his mouth. The kitchen looked so familiar and yet different as my brain struggled to react with what I was seeing. Emmy's face was split into a manic grin because of her win, but there was something splattered on her lips and dripping from her chin. It wasn't Emmy I was looking at. It was what was in front of her, spread out like a main course, what she was tearing at like an animal. What was hanging out of Kaz's mouth in slithering strands dyed scarlet and piled on Rowan's plate. I was seeing flesh covering the table and them and the floor, and they were stuffing themselves. I thought it was raw chicken at first, and had decided at that moment that they really had lost their minds. Then, though, I saw what was lying at their feet. I saw the torso first, which had been torn into, guts spilling out onto the floor. The body was an unrecognizable mass of skinned bone and pooling scarlet before I saw the face, and clumps of hair which had been ragged from the skull. I recognized that dirty blonde ponytail. Unbelievably, I was staring at myself. I was ahead of my brain at that moment. I was already seeing everything for what it was in a hazy red cloud, and my brain could do nothing. It was me they were eating. They were ripping me apart, gnawing on my bones, stuffing my guts into a plastic container and using me as dip. I was paralyzed. I looked at the window, at the duct tape blocking out the moon's light. So, this wasn't an effect of the moon. This was them. This was all them. Emmy was the first to notice me. Her smile dampened, and she dropped what looked like stringy pieces of intestine clenched between her fists. My roommate's eyes widened, and for a moment she looked like she was on the edge of hysteria. "Nin!" she squeaked, the mushy mess of guts slipping from her hands. "Hey, this. The girl was struggling, her eyes snapping to my body, which had been hollowed out and cut into pieces on the floor. Then, to Rowan's plate, filled with a red mush of blended whatever, and whatever the fuck Kaz was sticking his fingers in. "This isn't what it looks like." Kaz finished for her. He stood up, seeming calmer than the others. Rowan was staring at me. His Ray-Bans pinned back dark curls, and his eyes didn't seem angry or even fazed that I was seeing this. They only regarded me with amusement, like he wanted me to find this. He looked torn whether to continue chewing on my flesh or try to explain. "Nin!" Emmy jumped up. "We can explain," she whispered. "Or Or we can't explain right now, but if you just let us. Let us what? Rowan scoffed. Explain? Yeah, we're way past that point. Do you want to try explaining Cafe Denin? He pointed to his chin. You've got a little of her small intestine there. What? Emmy shot me a look, swiping at her chin with her sleeve. Nin, ignore him. I don't remember my legs moving, but I was at the front door before I could release a breath. They followed me, their thundering footsteps pounding behind me. Now they were scared. When I was so close to the door, so close to letting in, that unearthly light, their expressions turned fearful. Nin. Kaz swiped blood from his mouth and chin. Don't open that fucking door. Emmy wrapped her arms around herself. Is she here? No, Rowan grumbled, shading his eyes. And she won't come as long as that door stays shut. I found my voice. Who are you talking about? Nobody, Kaz said. Just go back upstairs. We'll explain. I promise you. But you have to trust us. His tone was a warning. Trust you? I managed to get out. Are you fucking kidding me? It was funny. How they wanted me to trust them when I saw what they had done to me. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. I didn't want an explanation or a scuffed excuse. I wanted out of there. The rest is a sort of blur. I remember opening the door. Or at least I started to open it, and then I shut it again, panicking. Their cries were enough to make me regret it. But it was too late. I watched their eyes fill up with that same unearthly light which bathed the sky. It was beautiful and terrifying the way their resolve crumbled in their eyes and lips. Scowls turned to whimsical smiles, and blood-stained hands fell to their sides. The three of them headed back into the kitchen, and a sudden rhythmic knock on the front door startled me. I remember Rowan, at the corner of my eye, rummaging around in a drawer. Emmy and Kaz stood behind him. I risked going to the window and peeking out, but all I saw was the moon. The moon was right there, 3 inches from my face, like it had encased the sky and oblivion beyond. For a moment I was taken aback at how beautiful she was. There she was, bathing me in her light, in her glow, filling me with her song and her sweet words, and then a thud sounded behind me. Whatever had leached onto my mind let go, and I twisted to find Rowan on the ground in a rapidly growing pool of red. Her voice was in his head, just like it was in mine. Another thud, and then another, almost in sync. Kaz and Emmy followed. Their throats had been slit by their own fingernails, fashioned into claws. When it hit me that my roommates were dead, I was seeing her reflection in everything. In silverware which had been brought out from the drawers, bleeding through the duct tape on the back window. I knew what I had to do. I had to get the cops. I was halfway upstairs when a blinding flash filled the hallway, followed by the sound. It sounded like a camera, like someone was taking a photo. When I grabbed my phone from my room, the moon lingered on the screen, growing larger until I swore she wasn't just in reflective surfaces. She was at the corner of my eye, a half-crescent quickly reaching totality the more I caught her shadow looming. It was like a game she was playing. The more I caught her light, she only grew bigger. After a hysterical freakout with the cops, they came 5 minutes later. 2 officers followed me inside the house, one of them asking how many people were dead. 3. I kept saying, my roommates. I was speaking in barely decipherable sobs. My roommates are dead. When I led them into the kitchen, however, bracing myself for the gory aftermath of what I saw, I was greeted by the 3 of them sitting on the floor, resuming their game of Monopoly. My body, as well as every piece of me, was fucking gone. The blood pooling on the floor, as well as staining their skin and faces, was gone. Officers! Rowan saluted the cops with his drink. I noticed a glitter of light in his eyes. In Kaz's when he stood and folded his arms, his lips pulling into a smile. What's going on? He shot a look at me. Nin, come on. We're in the middle of a game. The officer standing behind me frowned. We were informed of a triple homicide. He cleared his throat. Everything seems to be relatively normal. Stepping in front of me, he was scowling. Miss Kane, are you aware that wasting police time is a criminal offense? They were dead, I said in a hiss. I saw them. They were dead. Uh-huh, The second officer sighed, turning to Kaz. Is your friend under the influence of drugs? Or too many scary movies? The other scoffed. Rowan jumped up. Nope. No, we're all good, officer. When he came over and grabbed my arm, his grasp was strangely gentle. When I was leaning into it, however, I glimpsed something on his neck. At first, I thought it was a tattoo, but it was engraved into his flesh, the number 2. She's not feeling great, he said. We apologize for any crap caused. The cops didn't say a word when they left, only muttering to each other about stupid kids. I couldn't face my roommates after that. I went upstairs and splashed water on my face. I was seeing things, I told myself. I was going fucking crazy. But then my fingers found the back of my neck, and I was twisting around, something acidic creeping up my throat. Rowan's neck displayed the number 2, while mine had the number 27. I went to bed after that. I was all ready to grab my things and leave while they slept, but when I risked standing on the top of the stairs, Kaz was in front of the door. It didn't look like he was blocking it intentionally, but I wasn't going to try. This morning was awkward. That's the only word I can think of to describe it. My roommates acted like nothing was wrong, like nothing happened. When I asked if the police had come back, Immy frowned at me over her oatmeal she hadn't touched. Police? Her eyes grew wide. Wait, did something happen last night? I was waiting for her to eat it, but she was just staring at it, like it was sentient. I thought back to last night, watching her chewing through a mouthful of me, and I felt sick to my stomach. Doubt it. Rowan had his back to me, making coffee. All I remember is passing out after Monopoly. After you lost. Immy coughed. Last night doesn't count. Kaz grabbed a seat next to me. As far as we know, Moon Sensitivity TM didn't get us, and Rowan let Imogen win Monopoly. Nin stayed in her room, and we survived another full moon. He smiled. Cheers to that. Hey, Nin. Rowan pushed past me when he took his plate to the dishwasher. If anyone knocks today, don't fucking answer it. I noticed Immy stiffen up. Kaz's smile faded. Understand? Rowan said. Shut off all the lights. With no explanation, the others left for class after breakfast, and I planned my escape. I wanted to pack up all my stuff, but instead, I found myself scouring their rooms for anything which would confirm last night was real, and I hadn't fucking hallucinated it. But their rooms were exactly how I knew them. Immy's was a total mess, covered in exotic plants she forgot to water, textbooks, a whole bookshelf dedicated to the horror genre, and every plushie you could think of. I looked under her bed, though there were just old snacks she'd forgotten to throw away and letters to her parents she had never sent. I tried Rowan's next, but it was more or less the same. I knew his room from movie nights I spent with him, though it still felt wrong going in there. Rowan's room was perfect. Everything was in its place and was strangely symmetrical. His books were color-coded, and there was one singular Yoda plushie peeking from his bed covers. Under his bed were the usual things you'd find in a man's room, used tissues and odd socks. But there was nothing I'd consider weird, nothing that told me he was a cold-blooded murderer. I was losing motivation when I reached Kaz's room at the end of the hallway. I expected the usual when I stepped inside, movie posters on the walls, and Japanese snacks littering the floor. There was that, of course. I knew Kaz well, but when I peeked under his bed, there was something wrapped in plastic. When I crawled further under, I saw through the plastic. I saw the same flesh from last night, pieces of torso and limbs ripped through and torn into, but there wasn't just one of me. There were multiple mutilated bodies, which all had my face squished against the plastic and pooling red, my cannibalized body stuffed into trash bags, my own dead eyes staring at me. My mind flashed back to the blinding light filling the hallway, and the sound of a photograph being taken, the moon following me, creeping behind me as I made my getaway upstairs to grab my phone to call the cops. My pinky toe growing back right in front of my eyes. I know this sounds fucking crazy, but I think my roommates are copying me. That's what the 27 means. I've been copied 27 times. Copied. Cloned. Whatever. So they can eat me. I am yet to go back home as I'm writing this. I'm planning to go back and get my stuff, but right now I can't. I want to blame all of this on them, but I keep thinking back to Rowan's words. That night, I was a coward and left them, and somehow, these are the consequences. What did I do to turn them into this? Rowan said this is my fault. It's driving me crazy that I can't remember it. How can I get those memories back? But do I want them back? Do I want to know what turned my roommates into this? Esto fue noche de horror.